I was in London, and they asked me to come in and give some feedback to an organization. The organization talks about ethics, and they were asking me to come in and give feedback to how their work on ethics connected to our work on connections between leaders and teams. And these are really smart, capable people from some of the best schools in the world, the Sorbonne, Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, etc. And I was a little intimidated, and so my first sets of comments for the first couple hours of the day were somewhat weak. Then the CEO comes to me and says, "What are you doing? We didn't ask you here because you're like us. We asked you here because you're not like us." Right? So kind of gave me a punch in the kidneys and said, be who you are, be what you have trained yourself to be. Show up, show out, be somebody.
Welcome to the Prosper Brief, a show dedicated to elevating the future of the food service and hospitality industry. I'm your host, Jeremiah Wynn, the Content and Marketing Manager here at Prosper. And today we have a very special episode featuring Dr. James Pogue, CEO of JP Enterprises and a leading voice in leadership and organizational transformation. Let's dive in. Attention emerging leaders in food service and hospitality. Are you ready to accelerate your career? If so, join us for the Accelerate Conference on October 22nd through the 24th at the Omni Hotel in Dallas, Texas. Gain insights from over 1,000 collective years of business and leadership experience. Engage in more than 30 focused breakout sessions. Be inspired by 5 empowering general sessions featuring industry experts. Don't miss this opportunity to build valuable connections and elevate your leadership talent to give your business the competitive edge it deserves. Register today at prosperaccelerate.com. Dr. Pogue, how are you doing?
I'm having a great day.
I'm glad, man. Yeah, and you're in Dallas. You were just now in Asia for a few weeks.
Yeah, had a great time there. Great food, a great long walks. I always walk a lot in Asia. It helps me to sort of center myself. Part of my, connection to the Buddhist philosophy is often there.
Okay. What part of Asia were you at?
I spent some time in Hong Kong doing some work there. I did a masterclass on deep connections in personal and professional relationships, and then a live session with some folks around the same thing while in Hong Kong, and then in Ho Chi Minh City, doing some business development. In my spare time, I teach dance internationally, so I taught a class while I was there, and then I swung through Thailand on my way home. Spent about a few days there.
There's so much to unpack there, man. Because first I'm like, okay, from the business development side, doing that internationally, what do you do to that works internationally, as far as like the culture that you bring to the table?
Well, at the end of the day, connections between leaders and teams help to generate more innovation, creativity, production, and eventually profits. And so the better connector a leader is with his or her team, the more likely they are to be successful. And that's across world level barriers, organizational barriers. It is what it is. And so our expertise is in identifying what the wobbles are in those connections between leaders and teams, turning down the temperature on the negative and turning up the temperature on the positive. The reality is that anything that separates us can be used to bring us together. There's no such thing as a wedge issue. They're all just issues, right? And so we can use them to come together if we choose and if we're willing to do the hard work. It's not easy, but it is possible.
Okay. Wow. And then with the dance, what kind of dance were you teaching out there?
Sure. So I do a few different dances: salsa, bachata. Those are Latin-based dances. And then I also do kizomba, which is an African-based dance. It has different versions of kizomba. One looks a little like salsa. Then there's urban kizomba, which is what I do most of the teaching and dancing in. It looks a little bit more like tango, if you will, but has softer edges. So I've spent some time teaching both in the States and in other parts of the world doing that, and I really enjoy it.
Wow. Okay. Well, so that's like a great introduction to this because we're going to be talking about the pain before the peak. And that's basically when you're on your rise to the top, there's going to be things you go through. There's going to be isolation. There's going to be hard times, sleepless nights. And it's all because of the development and the story. A lot of times I think for me too, especially growing up, I assumed that, greatness was this place that I was going to get to. And then the movie ends. but the movie is constant. Things are constantly happening. Is there anything you want to add to that?
No. I think that that's it. I mean, it's also this idea that there's no way that you're going to be great without great pain. There's no way you're going to have great success without massive sacrifice. It hurts to be great. And if you don't want to hurt, then don't worry about being great. Then that's something else is for you. Being great isn't for you. You don't accidentally become great.
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, a little bit about me. I grew up in church. My dad was a pastor. And I remember I just always wanted to be a drummer. So I would beat on pots and pans as a kid. My dad got me a snare when I was like 5 or 6. I would take the snare to church. The other drummers would use my snare and play on it. Um, then there became moments when I finally turned like 8 or 9 years old. I'd have an opportunity to play the drums. And I remember those moments when I would get on the drums, I would be playing and I'd be dragging. So then my dad would walk across the podium, kick me off the drums, like allow somebody else to be on. And I remember just sitting at the front of the church, just crying, watching someone else live out my dream, I guess. So eventually my dad, he bought me a drum set. I learned fundamentals. I learned like rudiments, and I get really good. And eventually, like, then I become the person who now I'm the one being called to kick other people off, but also like people like look up and it's like this the same guy who was just not getting kicked off a couple years ago. Now he's doing all this, and from that and that, I mean, it obviously was very traumatic. A little bit, it was really humiliating. But through that, I kind of understood the need for that pain and for that humiliation, because it gave me a drive. If I wasn't able to be this drummer just because my dad was a pastor, there's like this edge that I would not have had, and this drive that I would not have had like playing and practicing by myself. So I say all that to say, for you, where did it start? Where did your drive come from at your early ages of development?
Well, before I do that, I just want to reflect something that you shared, because I think that there's a caution I have around language, which is to say people can take what you say and then run with it and take it maybe not quite the right direction. What I heard you say was your father offered you an opportunity to learn humility, right? And it is embarrassing to go from being the guy on the snare to sitting next to the guy on the snare. It's embarrassing, right? But you had to learn. You weren't ready, right? Somebody had to say you're not ready yet. My martial arts instructor, when I was being promoted to black belt in my second area of expertise, he told all of us this parable, and the parable was basically the long and short of it was you never get to decide when you're ready for the next level. It's always somebody else, right? And so that humility is necessary for you to make it to the next level. And if you are, if the opportunity to be humble, call it the humiliation, is too much, don't worry about being great, right? So when you ask me like where it's happened for me, like if I go backwards, oh man, um, there's a lot. The one that is maybe the most impactful, that creates the most shadows for me, if you will. My father was a fantastic athlete, great at track, great at football, high school, college, whatever. Basically a legend. In fact, he was just put into the Hall of Fame for his college, right? So um, good for him. And I was living with him, and we were almost like we're always late for stuff for some reason. And in this particular case, it was in Colorado. We were late to get on the bus, the city bus, which needed to take me to school and him to go to work where he was coaching football. And so we were running to the bus. It's a crisp Colorado morning, little bit of mist, maybe 60 degrees. Father and son running together to the bus feels, it was good. It's feeling like a good thing. You and your pops doing his thing, right? And my bus is coming. His bus is yet to come. So I'm about to get on the bus, or the bus is about to stop. And he says, "Hey, you think you can play ball for me?" And I'm 14, 13, 14. I'm at that stage. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I can do that. And he says, "No, you're too weak." The bus comes, the doors open. I get on, I go to school. And I don't know what crushing feels like as a 13-year-old, but maybe it's something like that. But then I have to decide, right? What am I going to do with that? Am I going to be the kind of person that's crushed? Or am I going to be the kind of person that uses what just landed on me to try to figure out how to lift it, to push it, to move it, to learn from it? And I chose the latter.
Why do you think so many people in that position will choose to be crushed?
I think we are at a time where resilience is not in heavy supply, where grit is not taught early and often to young children, to older children, to young adults, to adults. We have to invite failure into the lives of children and young adults so that they can become accustomed to the trauma that happens that allows you the opportunity to grow resilience.
Wow, that's so interesting. Like that's one thing I was really a couple weeks ago when we were on the call with Luke and with everyone else. I was really drawn to just your whole stance on being uncomfortable and resilience, because me, I'm a father of three, and a lot of times, like as
Congratulations.
thank you so much. A lot of times with my wife, like the way that I try to drive my son, a lot of times she's more comforting, she's more, I'll say, coddling a little bit, and I've been trying to drive the point of things are just not easy. Things aren't going to be easy. So if we give him the expectation at 7, 8, 9 that things are going to go your way, it actually kind of like sets him up for failure later on, because as life goes on, things are just not going to go your way, you know?
I think that you're right about that. And if I were to add, that's why it's important to have at least two parents around, right? If you got some grandparents, some aunts and uncles, some coaches, some teachers, some mentors, throw them all in. But as long as this kid is still pointed north, you know, you all determine what north is as the parents, and then everybody else sort of leans in. In many households, there is a person, in your case, it's you as the father, who is, we might need to make this a little harder for our son, for our daughter, right? We need to make it a little harder. Maybe we need to make it impossible so that they can understand failure. Meanwhile, you've got a partner, a wife who says, come on now. Let's figure that out. I was watching a video, maybe you've seen it. It's a YouTube thing that was happening. This kid's in the batting cage and he's trying to swing the ball at the bat. The bat hits him in the hand or something. He drops the bat. And of course, he's in pain. Now, the kid is maybe 7, 8, 9, so he's a small kid, right? And in the background, you hear his father say, you need to pick up the bat. Kid's crying, kid's upset. You need to pick up the bat. Kid picks up the bat. You need to get in your stance. Kid's crying, kid gets in the stance. Sends another ball. Kid misses the ball. Sends another ball. Kid misses the ball. Sends another ball. Kid hits the ball. Sends another ball. Kid hits the ball. Point being, there would be nothing wrong with going to that kid. Let me see your hand. Everything all right? Let me see it. Kiss you on the hand. Big hug. Kiss on the forehead. Get back in there. Or you know what? We're done for the day. We'll try it another time. Nothing's wrong with that. And nothing's wrong with that father did. Sometimes life hits you in the head with a baseball bat, not just the ball on the hand. And you have to decide what you're going to do. Who are you going to be today? Right? How are you going to represent your last name? How are you going to represent the company you work for? How are you going to represent the people in the mirror? How are you going to represent your children? How are you going to represent your wife? How are you going to represent your husband? Right? These are hard choices. And when hard shows up, you going to answer the door? Or are you going to get somebody else to do it?
Do you think that people's fear of failure exceeds their dreams? They're more afraid of failing than they are afraid of not seeing their dreams come true?
I think that applies to people who don't accomplish their dreams. Right? There are things that keep us from accomplishing our dreams. There's no doubt. For me, it was lack of talent. Right? We talked about. I went to school to play in the band, and I wanted to play for the New York Philharmonic or the Boston Pops. I wasn't good enough. So what kept me from accomplishing that dream was talent. I didn't have the talent. Right? There's other times when the dream is taken from you by somebody who has more power or influence than you. Right? Your father saying, no, 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 no. I'm not allowing that. Right? Let's eliminate for the moment that you weren't good enough for what dad wanted, right? He still is in control whether you get the opportunity or not. And I think that for those people who do accomplish the dream, even if it's a dream deferred, even if it's not the dream you thought it would be, but it is the dream, right? I wanted to be a university president when I went to grad school. That's the whole reason I got a PhD. It's the only reason I wanted to get a PhD. And as I was striving for that goal, I was accomplishing, whatever it is people accomplish on the way to that. But I learned over time that what I really wanted to do was impact people's lives in a positive way, as many people as possible. And as it turns out, being a university president wasn't the best way for me to do that. I thought the dream was university president. I learned that the dream was impact positively the lives of other people, right? So, as one of my mentors said to me, God placed in front of you the goal you could understand until you could understand more, and then it could be removed.
Okay. My next question, even going along with that. So when do you know when it's necessary to make sacrifices to fulfill your dream? Whether it be because you want to eventually be in the C-suite, whether it be because you want to be the president of a university, when is it necessary to make a sacrifice? And when do you have to understand this is just not going to happen because I don't have the talent? This isn't what I want. How do you kind of analyze that?
Yeah, we have to surround ourselves with smart people who have the courage and the ability to tell us the truth at times when we may not want to hear it. Because we only know what we know. And so, by surrounding myself or ourselves with smarter, more capable, more experienced people, they can do us the favor of helping us avoid pain. Right? They can. It's a nice thing to do to help somebody avoid pain. Right? Even if what you're telling them hurts them in the moment. James, you're not good enough to do this. Let's try something else. Right? I remember I was in the band halls of the summer between my freshman and sophomore year. I come into the band hall and I hear the seniors practicing, and I'm like, man, I can't do that. Like, I'm never going to be able to do what they're doing. Never. Right. And I was walking with some other sophomores and I was like, we're talking to each other, like, man, I got to figure out something else to do because I can't do that. Right. And it reminds me of, I suppose, what some professional athletes feel like when they're at college. They can play at the best colleges, but they're not good enough to play in the pros. You got to find something else to do. And so the dean of students was helpful to me, and it helped me to visualize what my future might be. These were not easy conversations, right? And so surrounding yourself with people that are beyond you is always important. Having a personal advisory board was the nouveau language about 15 years ago. That you should have people that surround you, that you check in with regularly and say, how am I doing? Right? And they'll give you feedback. So when is the time to sacrifice versus shift? You'll find that out through utilization of your personal advisory board, honest conversations with yourself, and time.
Would you consider that being realistic to say, I can't do that? What would you call that? That just having that awareness.
Exactly that, awareness, right? We all have moments of clarity. We all have moments of weakness, right? I have moments of doubt. It wasn't doubt when I heard them playing. It was like, I'm aware of my skills. I'm aware of what I'm hearing. And if I'm being an objective, honest broker of myself, I can't do what they are doing, right? If I change the channels to a few years later, I go to my first national championship, martial arts national championship. I go to the first one, and I get my butt kicked. I get a silver medal, but I got beat up in the process. My eyes were swollen, my hands were swollen. I remember I'm talking to my instructor, like, hey, I thought the rules said light face contact. He says to me, are they hitting you in the face lightly? I said, no, sir. He says, well, that must be the definition of light today. You need to make a decision. So the question becomes, can I run with the big girls and boys or not? Am I willing to? So I had to hit people harder, much harder. And I got hit much harder, right? I got second place. As far in my life, that sucked. Second place sucked that day. I earned it, but I'm coming back because I think I can win. I don't think I'm second place material. Not in this. In this, oh, I'm first place material. But playing at the New York Philharmonic, no, I am not. Right? I had awareness. I had objectivity. I had smart people around me who had the courage to tell me the truth. And that's what helped me identify the difference between, is this a moment of weakness? Is this imposter syndrome? Or is this the truth?
Hmm. I like that. That's great. So even though you had people around you, were there moments in your journey where you have felt isolated?
Always. I almost always. The opposite question is just as crucial, right? Are there moments where I feel like I'm connected? I feel by myself a lot, right? I feel alone a lot. This is the nature of doing something that other people don't do. The nature of leadership. You want to be in front? There's one spot at the front of the organization, right? There's one spot for the person who's gonna. I think I have something I want to say. Let me try. Let me try. It's one spot for you, and that moment of isolation, of being alone, get used to it. You don't always have to be there, but when it happens, make it familiar. Yeah, when I'm training in the martial arts, when I'm working on a new speech, when I was working on my music, when I'm practicing my dance moves, I'm by myself. I need, or I end up being isolated because I need to get better, right? I need to practice this thing 10,000 times. And I can't expect anybody else to be around for the 10,000 times. It's my job. So isolated, yes. Alone, yes. Lonely, sometimes. All right. I'm alone a lot. I'm isolated a lot, but I'm not always lonely.
And how do you differ? What's the difference between being lonely and being alone?
Being alone is it's sort of like the concept of diversity. It's just I'm the only person there. Thus, I am alone. Right. Lonely, nobody wants to be around me. I'm not welcome. I'm not invited. I don't feel like I belong. I don't feel like I'm part of a team, right? That that's lonely. Every now and again, it's more rare that I feel lonely, but I'm often alone. Yeah.
So when you made that pivot right into this, and you're in your career, what was the first moment where you just got the wind knocked out of you?
Sort of the "but you're welcome to the NFL" moment.
Yeah.
Um, there's there's a few of them. I was I didn't know how to introduce myself. Right. My mom named me James. And I'm talking to some of my colleagues. This one, he's an older fellow, 25, 30 years my senior, has my job title, but at a bigger university. And I said, I don't know how to introduce myself to my colleagues. All of us were in the same room, same job title. 3 or 4 of us had terminal degrees. And I said, he says, introduce yourself as James. They all know that you're Dr. Pogue. They'll decide what they want to call you. Right. So there's continual humbling moments like that. Um, Times when not really too big for my britches, but somebody said, sit in the right chair at the right table and give us what you got. Stop hesitating. I was in London and they asked me to come in and give some feedback to an organization. The organization talks about ethics. And they were asking me to come in and give feedback to how their work on ethics connected to our work on connections between leaders and teams. And these are really smart, capable people from some of the best schools in the world, the Sorbonne, Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, etc. And I was a little intimidated. And so my first sets of comments for the first couple hours of the day were somewhat weak. Then the CEO comes to me and says, "What are you doing? We didn't ask you here because you're like us. We asked you here because you're not like us." Right? So kind of gave me a punch in the kidneys and said, "Be who you are, be what you have trained yourself to be. Show up, show out, be somebody." Right? At Grambling, the tagline there is the place where everybody is somebody. But what's missing from that is you got to work to make your somebody worthwhile. So I had done the work, and he's saying, "Show up, buddy. Come on, give it to us." So I had to get back in the game.
Do you mentor many leaders who have that same thing of just feeling, whether it be um, like intimidated to be in that seat that they're in? And what do you say to them?
The answer is the mentor, maybe coach is probably a better word for much of that, but it's specific to the individual. But here's the theme: as I mentioned before, none of us decide when we're ready for the next chair or the next level. Somebody else is, and it takes you a while to get comfortable there. Give yourself permission to get time to get comfortable, right? Give yourself uh, some easy wins, right? And then celebrate those wins. You're gonna fail. Celebrate the failures too. And what I mean by celebrate is feel all of it. Feel the frustration, feel the disappointment, feel the anger, feel the annoyance, feel the irritation, right? Because when you win, and eventually you will, you want to be able to fully feel the joy, the exhilaration. And if you haven't jumped face first into these other emotions that some people call quote unquote negative, you cannot fully experience the positive ones. So when you mess up, jump face first and wallow around in the disappointment, irritation, double click into it and see where it came from and why, because you're going to win. And when you do, I don't want you to miss out on the joy.
Can you share a moment where failure helped refine you in your journey?
I'll go back to so from an athletic perspective, I'm at the national championships. I'm fighting for first and second, first year there, and the way that the tournament works is double elimination. And if you lose, you go into the losers bracket, and you keep fighting until you lose twice. I lost early, and I had to keep fighting until I got to a place where. Well, I lost early, and then the winners keep fighting until the one winner who's lost not at all is done. He gets to sit down. Then they start the losers bracket. I start fighting in the losers bracket. I have 7, 8, 9 fights. I have the talk with my instructor that I mentioned to you before. I lock in and I'm going to work. I'm getting beat up, but I'm beating people up, right? And then I got to fight this guy. His name is Doug. And he's been watching me the whole time. And I got to beat him twice. All I have to do is beat him twice. All he has to do is beat me once, right? This guy embarrassed me. He embarrassed me. In 3 quick moves, he knocked me down. I got up, knocked me down again. I got up, knocked me down, game over. Right. And I had to learn. I asked him afterward, like, "Dude, what was that about?" He says, "I watched you. If you felt like you had a chance, you might beat me. I had to eliminate from you hope, the hope of beating me." Right. And I'm like, this dude, he's good, right? He's not playing checkers. That's chess, baby. That's chess, right? Physically, we're on par with each other. Strategically, he's way better than I am. He's playing a different game. So I knew then I had a lot to learn, right? About how to win, how to be superior, how to be elite, right? These are not the same things as being very good.
How do you take that with you now in your career when you do want to win and be successful?
Yeah, when we apply for our contracts or put out proposals, we get no's all the time. I don't like it. I hate losing. I like winning, right? I'm a huge fan of winning, right? Sometimes I have to change the rules of the game. So we put out a proposal, comes back as a no, we get feedback. I take the feedback as a win. Well, if we would have done more of this or less of that, adjust the price up or down, etc. Um, so sometimes I have to find the win in the losses, have to find the nugget of gold in the dung that has been provided to me. So that's part of it. And then recognizing that my life, my role is not simply to always be winning. There's still lessons to be learned in the loss. There's success to be had in the failures. And I can't run from that either.
Yeah, all these quotes, I'm writing them down. Please bear with me.
Uh, well, like my sister says, just make sure you spell my name right.
That's great. Okay, so kind of going back to what you said, how it's not up to you to decide when you're ready for the next level. So for those people who are on the next level and they are feeling exhausted, like how do you know when to keep showing up for others when it's hard for you to just show up for yourself?
For some of us, there's a pre-programmed or a hard wiring about how we operate. I was thinking about this literally just yesterday. I've been a little under the weather, kind of a significant cold that I'm kind of recovering from now. And I was thinking to myself, how do I feel about, you happen to be married, I don't happen to be married, but if I had a wife and what would I want her role to be in my sickness? Right? And it came to me as like, I don't want her to be all nurturing and lovey dovey and all of that for the sake of that, for the sake of me. I've got a job, I've got a mission I'm trying to accomplish. I want other people's lives to be better than mine. I want her to help me do that. I want chicken soup so I can do that, right? I want her to help me design my life experience when I'm not feeling well so I can be in service of others, right? And so I would tell folks that when you're trying to figure out how to find peace for yourself, how to give out of an empty cup, right? To know that you're probably hardwired to pour your cup. You're never going to stop pouring your cup. It just happens to be empty today. And so your obligation to the people you serve is to go and fill your cup. You are filling your cup in service of others, right? It's not about you. And so if you can frame it that way, it makes it easier to fill your cup. If you frame it about, I'm filling my cup for me, they're more important than me. Why would I fill my cup? Until I figured that out, I would just work myself to the bone. Now I know that I purposely must take a 5-minute vacation where I'm not thinking about none of this and none of you people. 30-minute vacation, 10-day vacation, whatever. I'm not thinking about nothing and none of you people. I'm going to do what I want to do to fill my cup. Why? Because I owe the world my best. And you're going to get it, right? You're going to get it. And the only way you're going to get it is if I'm ready to give it. Some of these people also know 10% of them is better than 50% of somebody else. And so their logic becomes, I've got this much left, but it's better than this much somebody else can give, right? They may be correct. And you have to fight against that, right? Or you have to balance that and recognize this is the kind of animal I am. I'm hardwired to be this way, right? It's probably never going to change, which is why I must, logistically, from a process perspective, include in my life cup filling activities.
Can you give us some example of those, please? Like, continue.
Sure. So for me, it's dance, right? One of the reasons I really prefer the dance that I execute or that I teach or that I do socially is because it allows me to be in the arms of another human, and we're holding one another, and we are in this moment together, sort of feeding each other. I receive that and it fills my cup. I receive that from them, right? For me, it's martial arts. When I'm fighting, it's meditation for me, right? It helps that I'm good enough now to not get hit in the face as often as I used to. That's helpful, right? But that's part of it as well, right? Some people walk, some people read, some people run, some people sleep, some people. You have to find your piece of peace and get multiple pieces of it, right? And then if you have the wonderful luxury of a spouse or a partner who understands you, who knows what you need and require, they can help you. They can be the person that comes to you and says, "Hey, James, look here. I went ahead and signed you up for this dance festival in Taiwan, and you're going to be gone for a week. I talked to all your clients. I rescheduled everything, blah, blah, blah. Here's your plane ticket. I'll see you when you get back." Now, I may be irritated at my spouse or wife. How you go in my calendar and adjust my stuff and blah, blah, blah. But I know she loves me, and I know she sees what I'm going through, and I know she sees that I need to fill my cup. So I take my ticket, I get on the plane, and I go, right? So my hope would be that I would be able to do the same for her. But my point here is you have to find your piece of peace and get as many pieces of it.
What do you say to those leaders who they do work nonstop, because of their job, because of the stress of their job, and they may not have time to go to a dance class or to go it's just they're just always on. What do you say to those type of leaders?
Make time. Don't come to me and tell me you don't have time. I don't believe you. Make time. You're a powerful person. You're an influential person. Make time. Right? The busiest people we know can still make time. It's not going to happen for you. You're not going to accidentally find a moment of respite. You're going to have to demand it, right? You didn't accidentally become a captain of industry. You didn't accidentally become the chief financial officer of a $15 billion organization. It didn't happen accidentally. So vacation and peace are not going to happen accidentally. You want it, you better go get it. All of these people, these C-suite people, these EVPs, these board members, here's one thing that's clear about them. They're all competitive. You need to treat your peace like you're competing for it, right? You want it, go get it. You didn't get it, you don't want it. You didn't want it. Decide it's what you require. Decide it's what you deserve. Go get your peace. Don't wait for somebody to give it to you. That for those people, right? They have the options. They got the money, they got the influence, they got the experience. Make the time.
I like that. Even and kind of like just veering off to this next question, it's about decision making. What's one decision that you had to make that hurt in the moment, but it ultimately shaped your growth as a leader?
um, Deciding that I was never going to be a president of a university. It gutted me. It gutted me. And my mentor at the time, she told me, says, "James, I don't think that's what you should do. It's too small for you." In my mind, I was like, "Woman, you don't know me. You don't know my pain. You don't know what I've been struggling through." And I had to spend some time alone. This is a smart, capable person that loves me and wants the best for me. She has helped me refine what my goals in life are, and for good reason. And based upon the lens that she has on my life and her massive wisdom and experience, she's given me this feedback. Pain or not, that doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do, right? Disconnecting from comfort. It was comfortable. It was a comfortable goal. It's also kind of a fancy goal that nobody says you shouldn't be a president of a university. That's a terrible job. No, it's a nice thing to say out loud. People are like, "Oh man, look at you." To go for something a bit more amorphous, like I want to change how leaders think about their leadership. Well, what are you talking about, James? It's a bit too esoteric, right? But it helps me impact people. I'm happy doing it. I love my work. It's that I have the kind of job that if the world were set up differently, I would do my job for free.
What was that season like when you made that decision? Like directly after that, the next, like, let's say 6 months to a year. What was that season like as you processed this new goal in your life?
Yeah, it required some 20-hour days because I had to transition out of the life that I was in into the life that I needed to be in, which meant I had to work on both ends of the day. And me and sleep, I'm familiar with sleep, but I don't have an intimate relationship with it. And I had to work hard, and I had to get uncomfortable and maintain a high level of discomfort for an extended period of time. And what I've learned over time is that there's people have history of that. Call it college. People have history of that. Call it the military. People have history of that. Call it burying your mother. People have history with that. Call it going through a divorce, where you have to maintain a high level of discomfort for an extended period of time, right? So it's not anything unusual that I had to go through. The person who's listening to this, we've all had to do it before. Dip into that experience and use it as a an outline for what you can do moving forward.
Man, that's so good. You're preaching to the choir because this is actually my second marriage, and I remember after my first wife, like when we were going through our divorce, and I was really holding on to it. Someone was just like, "Hey, you have to let it go," and it was really hard because I'm just like, man, like this is my wife, this is my family. We didn't have any kids, but what it meant to me was just so personal, so intimate. And it was a hard thing for me to let it go. But it's funny because while I was holding on to it, she was already so far gone, you know. It was never gonna work out anyways. It was just me and my peace of mind. You know, my peace of mind and knowing, okay, that season's over. I'm headed to the future. It was once I made that decision, I was able to see my current wife. You know, I was able to continue to process life, to continue to understand myself, and for me to grow. You know, but a lot of times, like when you are holding on to things for too long, it suffocates your future. Really,
Yeah, and if I take the analogy that you provided, you said, "Well, I was still connected over here. I once I finished disconnected over here, I could see my future wife." Right. So you were blinded. It blinded you to opportunity, staying connected to that thing over here. Right now, what many of us have to identify are what to the question you asked me before: when is the right time to let go? When is the right time to move on? Right? Your own spirit of discernment, your own awareness and objectivity, and then surround yourself with objective, healthy people that are further beyond where you are and have more wisdom than you have, and then listen to them. Right? It can't be a cacophony of noise, but it can be a chorus that says you probably should make a left hand turn here, even though you really want to make a right. And in the absence of knowing where you're going to go, make that left. We call that faith. We call that faith. And a lot of folks talk about faith till it's time to do faithful things, right? And I raise my hand as being one of those people, right? And I've not always gotten it right, but I try to stumble forward towards being a person that is not blinded by staying connected to the past, that allows me to have a clear vision for what my future may look like.
man, this is great. So I love how like we're kind of talking about like a crossroad that that you get up where it's you have to let go, you have to make a decision, right? For those people who you've reached this part in the mountain where you have to just you either have to keep going or you have to completely just quit and give up on whatever your goal was. For those people who are in the thick of it and their goal is to be in the C-suite, their goal is to be the president, their goal is to rise above everything. Like, what do you say to those people who are in the thick of it and it sucks and they're trying to question if it's even worth continuing on?
Yeah, check in with your personal advisory board or your professional advisory board. Check in with your coach, your champion, your advocate, your mentors, right? These people may not all populate your advisory board. So check in. How am I doing? Is it time for me to take the next move or should I stay pat for a little while? Right? Humility is the watchword here because it might be your time. Sorry, you might be ready, but it may not be your time. Right? Should I take this job when I really want this one? These are good questions to ask your advisory board, right? These are good questions to ask your coach, your advocate, your champion, your mentor. None of us have gotten where we are or where we're going to be by ourselves, right? Not a one. So check in with other people. If you feel like I am struggling, I'm in a tough place, I don't know what to do, that's because there's a lot of I going on, right? If you're framing it as I've talked to a lot of people, I've gotten a lot of information, there are some themes in that, and now I have to make a decision. That's empowerment. And with that empowerment comes accountability. If you decide to go left, you're accountable for that. You decide to go right, you're accountable for that. You decide to stay pat, you're accountable for that too.
So for me, I always felt like I had bigger vision than the people who were around me. So a lot of times I couldn't really share what my goals and desires were with the people who I was around because they just could never see it anyways. So I always felt like I was just in this box of press. So at this point in my life now I have, thank God, I have mentors and I have leaders who are helping me push. But 10 years ago it necessarily wasn't like that for me, right? So what would you say to those people who they have vision but they don't have the right personnel around them that can act as an advisory board for them?
Go get it. Go be in a different room. If you're in a room where there's nothing there, go find a different room to be in. Right. If you're not sitting in the right seat on the right bus, go find another bus. Ask your mentors and advisors, where's the bus stop that I need to get on the right bus? I've gone to people and all but begged, can I just carry your briefcase into that room and sit in the back? Right. When I was jumping off the public speaking cliff, there's this guy, he's an unbelievable public speaker. I said, look, if you will allow me, I'd like to fly to your next keynote. I like to hold your briefcase while you're taking your meetings. And then after you give your keynote, I'd like to take you to dinner. I'll have a bunch of questions. Could we do that? Right. I learned so much. And he was so gracious and helpful to me. So if you feel like the people that are in the room with you now, if I take your point, can't see the vision you're trying to lay down, they're not seeing what you see, go find another room of people who are visionaries, right? Because they're going to sit down and say, okay, tell us your vision. You're going to say what you say, and they're going to poke holes in it, and it may not feel comfortable because they're going to be beyond you. They've done this 10, 20 times, 30 times before, right? If you want to move your company from 500,000 to 750, from 750 to 1 million, 1 million to 2 to 5, right? You got to go in a room with the people that are beyond you. They're talking about different things, probably. They've made different mistakes, probably, right? One of the things that was difficult for me to hear when I was trying to grow and scale the business was, it wasn't that I wasn't selling enough widgets, it's that my widgets were priced at this level and somebody else's widgets are priced here. So they got to sell way less widgets than I do to make more money. Now, we were in different industries. And so that's when I became annoyed with my industry of choice for a little while, right? That I had chosen in the beginning higher education, universities, and now professional services as my area, my industry area. Other people chose technology or cars or something else. And their price per widget was just more than mine. So that was an awareness piece. Then it was about how they were setting up their widgets, their marketing, their operations, et cetera. There's some learnings that I had to have there. So getting into the different room matters a great deal.
So one thing you just said too was when you get into that room, they're going to poke holes through you, through your vision, and it may not feel good. What are your thoughts about feelings, and how do you gauge like how you feel, like whether it's realistic or whether it's is it a good is it a good compass for you when you're following your dream?
So feelings are wonderful, extremely important things. Feelings may or may not be facts, right? And in today's uh, lexicon, today's nomenclature, people use the phrase I feel to represent something else. right? Um, I feel like this is the right direction to go. Well, I feel is kind of an emotional component, right? What you're saying is you believe, right? Maybe the evidence has provided you information to suggest that turning left is the right thing to do. So sometimes that our language is not aligned to what we're thinking or trying to express. What I've also suggested to people is when people say, I'm feeling a certain way, I'll pause them and say, unpack the feeling. Because sometimes we use the word feeling to cover a bunch of sins, a bunch of categories, but we're not really adept at saying, what is the feeling? Hey, this conversation is making me feel some kind of way. What does that even mean? What am I supposed to do with that as your leader, as your spouse, as your team member? But if someone can pause us, because it's not wrong to say that, but if someone can pause us and say, hey, James, when you said you're feeling some kind of way, what exactly do you mean there? And I can say, it's irritating, it's annoying, I'm feeling pressured, right? I'm feeling less than, I'm feeling disappointed. Ah, now we've added some color to the conversation. I think that linguistically, sometimes we've gotten lazy, and this allows us to not have to take accountability or to have to out our feelings. Instead, we can just say, I'm feeling some kind of way about that. You got to unpack that so we can have a deeper connection, you and I together.
Okay. Um, and when you are feeling some kind of way, or maybe you feel like you are being exhausted, or you have just been going and going, like you said, you were in Asia for 3.5 weeks. What keeps you going and what drives you even past what you feel?
Well, as I mentioned before, there's a hardwiring, right? I want to do something that will outlast me. I I feel a restlessness in my DNA that doesn't come from me. It comes from before me, and I want it to be here after me. I I was troubled when I initially read that. I think the phrase is, 4 generations after you're gone, no one will know you existed. I don't want to be that person in my family or with my friends. You know, I would love one of my the roles that I love the best in life is being an uncle, right? And I'm an uncle to any number of biological nieces and nephews, but also to non-biological nieces and nephews, my friends' kids who have chosen to call me Uncle James, right? And in Asia, particularly in Singapore, when I meet my friends' kids, it is common for you to be called Uncle so and so, right? You're introduced to the children that way. You're a trusted person. What are you going to do with that trust, James? What are you going to do with the responsibility of being an elder in this person's life for 10 minutes, 10 days, or 10 years? I want to have a deeper impact than they can possibly imagine. And that's what keeps me up. That's what keeps me restless. That's what burns inside of my bones. And I'll conclude that thought with this. When my time is over and I cross to the other side, in my mind's eye, I have this table where all of my ancestors are sitting. The ones that came before me and the ones that will come after me. They're all sitting there. And there's my seat. And when I walk in, are they going to say, hey, have a seat? Glad to have you here. They're going to stand up and say, yes, yes. Thank you for doing what you had to do. Thank you for working it out. Thank you for struggling. Thank you for failing. Or are they going to say, there's your seat, right? I, I want more, you know? If the world works out, or if when I die it works out that God introduces me to the perfect version of me, if I would have done all the quote unquote right things, this is what you would have looked like. Will I even recognize that person? Will they look like me? Will they feel like me and smell like me? Will they align with me? Will I be able to look at that person and say, I've been chasing you my whole life? That's what I want. I want to win. And winning is trying to be the best version of myself, not in the sort of today's colloquialism of it, but in the deep inside the bones of my great 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 granddaughter. She feels like me, right? She breathes like me. She drives like me. She's motivated and driven. Yeah, that's it. I can do that.
Do you believe that it's important for leaders to have that sort of sense of purpose as they carry on their vision for their careers and their life?
It's important, but it's not required. There's great leaders who are able to help us execute what we need to execute in the absence of having a driving vision. They just have skills and they've got enough. But there are those that have that special something that connects to the special something inside of you, inside of me, that helps us to get there. Or, third option, they've got this special something, but it doesn't connect to me. But I see it. It's just not my thing, right? So I think that's fine too. I like people with passion and drive. It doesn't have to be my thing.
Man, James, so that's pretty much all the questions that I have for you, man. Like, we can be talking here all day. I mean, I love podcasting because I feel like it's a cheat code to being mentored and coached by people such as yourself. Thank you so much for being a part of the Prosper Brief, man. I know that our listeners, they got so much out of this. So thank you for all these gems and so everything, man.